In the winter of 54 BC, a Roman senator walked barefoot through the freezing streets of Rome wearing a dark tunic that decent men only wore at funerals. He had no toga, he had no shoes, he was not poor, not insane, and not in mourning. He was Marcus Porcius Cato, great-grandson of Cato the Censor, one of the richest and most respected men in the Republic, and he was doing it on purpose. Plutarch tells us this in his Life of Cato the Younger, and the detail is so strange most people skip past it. They shouldn't. Because hidden inside that barefooted walk is one of the most useful psychological techniques the ancient world ever produced. A technique for making yourself almost impossible to insult. Here is what Cato actually did. He wore the wrong clothes in public. He went bareheaded in the rain when every other senator covered up. He walked when his rank demanded a litter. On military campaign, he ate the same black bread and drank the same sour wine as his common soldiers, and he marched on foot beside them while the other officers rode. Plutarch says he did all this not to show off, but to train himself, to get used to being ashamed only of what he himself thought was shameful, and never of what the crowd thought was shameful. Read that again. He was rehearsing humiliation on his own terms so that nobody else could ever hand it to him. And here is the twist that hits hardest. Cato was not a stoic monk, hiding in a cave. He was an active politician fighting Julius Caesar for the soul of the Roman Republic. He needed status. He needed votes. He needed the respect of the Senate. And yet he deliberately spent part of every week looking ridiculous in front of the exact people whose opinion controlled his career. Why would anyone do that? Because he understood something most people never figure out. The fear of looking bad is a leash, and whoever holds the leash owns you. If you can be embarrassed, you can be steered. If a sneer from the right person can ruin your afternoon, then that person rules a little piece of your mind rent-free. Cato decided very young that nobody was going to rule any piece of his mind. So he practiced. He took small, deliberate doses of public discomfort the way a doctor gives you a small dose of a virus. He inoculated himself. The Stoics had a name for this kind of training. They called it praemeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils, and voluntary hardship, ascesis. Seneca writes about it directly in Letter 18 to Lucilius. He tells Lucilius to set aside a number of days in which he will eat the cheapest food, wear rough clothing, and sleep on a hard bed, and then ask himself, is this what I was afraid of? Seneca's line is blunt. He says we should make friends with poverty before poverty makes a stranger of us. That is Cato's morning, written as homework. And if this is already rewiring how you think about embarrassment, subscribe because we are about to get into the part most people never hear. Here's where it gets sharper. Cato was not just toughening his body, he was running an experiment on his own nervous system. Every time he walked into the forum dressed wrong, his stomach probably tightened, his face probably got hot. Senators stared, slaves whispered, and nothing happened. He survived, he went home, he ate dinner, the sun came up the next day. Do that enough times and your brain stops sounding the alarm. The shame circuit, the one that lights up when you imagine being laughed at, gets quieter. Not because you stopped caring about being a good man, but because you stopped confusing other people's eyebrows with the verdict on your life. Epictetus, who was born a slave and became one of the greatest of the Stoic teachers, says it cleanly in the Inoculating. He says, if anyone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, do not make excuses about what is said of you, but answer, he was ignorant of my other faults, else he would not have mentioned these alone. That is a man who has stopped flinching. That is the finished product of Cato's training. Now think about your own life. When was the last time you did something small and uncomfortable that nobody was watching just to prove to yourself that you could? Not for content, not for a story, just for you. Most people never do. Most people spend their whole adult life carefully managing the picture other people have of them. The right car, the right jacket, the right vocabulary at dinner. And then they wonder why a single rude comment from a coworker can wreck their week. It wrecks their week because they have outsourced the verdict on themselves. They have given the jury seat to strangers. Cato refused, and the result was almost supernatural. When Caesar himself stood up in the Senate and read out a letter that seemed to implicate Cato in a scandal, Cato simply walked over, took the letter, read it, and revealed that it was a private love note from Caesar's own sister Servilia. Plutarch tells the story with obvious delight. Cato could not be rattled, not even by Caesar, not even on the Senate floor, because he had already practiced being rattled in much smaller ways, on purpose, for years. Here's the part nobody saw coming. Cato's discipline was not loud. He did not lecture about it. Plutarch is careful to point out that Cato refused to perform his austerity. When other Romans started copying his style to look virtuous, Cato was annoyed, not flattered. The whole point was that the audience was inside his own skull, not out in the street. That distinction matters more than almost anything else in this practice. If you wear cheap shoes to be admired for wearing cheap shoes, you have not escaped the leash. You have just bought a longer one. The crowd still owns you. You are still performing. Real voluntary discomfort is private. It is the cold shower nobody knows you took. It is the meal you skipped, not for your waistline, but to remind your body that hunger is survivable. It is the expensive thing you chose not to buy, not so you could post about minimalism, but so you could feel in your own chest that you did not need it. Marcus Aurelius, 2 centuries after Cato, kept the same habit alive in private. In Meditations, Book 1, he thanks his tutor Rusticus for teaching him to dress plainly and to live simply, and he thanks his adoptive father Antoninus Pius for showing him how to enjoy comforts without clinging to them and to go without them without complaining. Marcus was the emperor of Rome. He could have had anything. He chose daily to want less than he could afford. That is Cato's technique, scaled up to a throne. Now ask yourself the harder question. What insult specifically are you most afraid of right now? Be honest. Is it being called cheap? Being called a failure? Being seen as out of style, out of shape, out of the loop? Pick the one that stings most. That is the exact place where someone else holds your leash. Cato's method says, walk straight into that fear in a small, controlled way, on a day you choose, in a form nobody else sees. Afraid of looking poor? Wear the same plain shirt 3 days in a row to a place where people notice and say nothing about it. Afraid of looking weak? Lose an argument on purpose to someone whose opinion you do not actually respect, and feel your face get hot and let it pass. Afraid of being forgotten? Spend an evening without your phone with no one knowing where you are, and watch the world keep turning. Each small rehearsal takes a brick out of the wall the crowd built inside your head. Seneca, in Letter 13 to Lucilius, warns that we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. He says there are more things, Lucilius, that frighten us than injure us, and we suffer more in apprehension than in actuality. Cato's morning practice was the cure for exactly that. He was collapsing the imagined monster by meeting a small, real version of it on purpose. And here is the part that should land hardest. Cato died at Utica in April of 46 BC by his own hand, rather than accept a pardon from Caesar after the Battle of Thapsus. Whatever you think of that ending, notice what it required. A man who could not be bribed, could not be flattered, and could not be shamed into bending the knee. Caesar, when he heard, is said by Plutarch to have cried out, "Cato, I grudge you your death, as you grudged me the saving of your life." The conqueror of the known world was furious that one stubborn senator had escaped his power by refusing to want anything Caesar could give or take. That is what a lifetime of small, private, voluntary discomfort builds. Not a hard man, a free one. So here's your assignment from a Roman who has been dead for over 2,000 years. Tomorrow morning, do one small thing that would slightly embarrass the version of you that cares what strangers think. Eat something plain, wear something unimpressive, skip the upgrade, take the stairs in the wrong shoes. Tell no one, post nothing. Just notice that you survived and that the part of you that was scared got a little quieter. Do that for a month and you will start to understand what Cato understood. The world cannot insult a man who has already, gently and on purpose, embarrassed himself in private and found that he is still standing. The leash only works if you are pulling against it. Let it go slack and you will be amazed how much of your life you suddenly own. If this hit, like the video and subscribe, because the next one goes deeper into how Marcus Aurelius ran his own mind at 3 in the morning.